a state of awareness, right? We were talking about our consciousness, spelled CONSCIOUS, right? And not CONSCIE. NCE? What kind of conscience is that? Yes, morals, little person on your shoulder, that sort of thing. The conscious, the way we're talking about it, is the way like Freud talked about it, right? Our awareness of things around you, and Freud particularly like the unconscious as well. So we've got a conscious as well as an unconscious memory, an experience of things sort of happening to us. So what does it mean to be conscious of something? To be aware of it, right? So when we take in this data, like we talked about bringing in data from our environments and things like that, we take this information in, and so when it's in our short-term or working memory is when we are conscious of it, right? And then what do we decide to do with it? Yep. And then sometimes we keep it, sometimes we don't, right? Sometimes parts of after we've analyzed it and thought about it and decided if it's worth having, right, in our system, and then we could put that into our longer term memory, or we can get rid of it. All right, so it can either, go into storage or not. Okay, so when we talk about consciousness in this chapter in this way, we're sort of talking about our conscious existence. We talked about it a little bit last time. We talked about being hypnotized, which I thought if you're still wanting to do, we would do on Friday if we end a little bit early. Okay, we can try to do that. I don't know if it's going to work in this setting, but we'll see. So practice being susceptible. So we're sort of talking about a different kind of conscious than Freud was, right? So we're talking about our awareness, like our environmental awareness, the information around us, and we're also talking about our degree of what they call wakefulness or alertness, right? So we've all, every day we have periods where we're more or less alert, right? How many people are morning people? How many people like sort of get up and think in the morning? Good. I'm definitely a morning person. How many people think that they are night people? Okay. I think in general most college students or high school students or teenagers are night people. So, and then everyone has their points during the day when they are more or less alert and with it. What do you guys do to keep yourself alert if you are feeling sleepy? Coffee? What? Thank you. I had no idea what you said. I actually thought you said sleep eating, and I was like, that's not at all going to keep you alert. That's sleep eating. Okay, and so when you want to be alert, you put the music up a little bit, right? What do you do if you're driving, you feel a little tired, you put the music up, windows down, right? A little fresh air. So going for a walk or like doing some jumping jacks a lot of times, something like that will wake you up a little bit, get your heart pumping, that'll help. Cracking your neck, maybe, Patrick. What's that? It's not going to work. Anything else? Chew gum. Okay. I can see mint waking you up in general and chewing, right?
When I'm tired on driving for reflectors in the road, I can play a little game.
He's elsewhere, swerving out of the way.
If there's no cars, yeah. I mean, anything you can do, right? That like sort of keeps you alert. Absolutely. What's that?
Yeah.
Nicotine? Yeah. Cigarettes. Shower. Has to be cold, right? A hot shower does not keep you up. Yep. What about you, Alan? Get like a little noise going? Hopefully not at other people, right?
That's crazy.
What times, what kind of situations are you guys in? We've mentioned driving, right? Sometimes driving you can sort of zone out and that zaps your alertness. What other kinds of situations or contexts do you find yourself getting sleepy? Class, right?
Oh yeah.
At work? I think work for me, it would depend what I were doing, right? If you work in like retail and you're busy, it's probably easy to stay awake. Um, what kind of job situations make you tired? Desk job.
You have nothing to do.
Nothing to do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, so what about the opposite? What times are you maybe very alert? When you wake up. Okay, if you're a morning person, when you wake up. Maybe if you're driving in the car and you sort of zoned out and caught yourself. I don't know about you guys, but I am really awake after that, right?
That happened to me in driver's ed once.
That does not surprise me, Avi.
I like started to fall asleep, and then he went, whoa, because we almost went to the ditch. And then he was just like, what happened? I said, I don't know. You tell me. And
Yep.
like I was awake. It was better after that.
Yeah. I once was driving home. I used to bartend, and I was driving home. It was late, 3:00. Nobody on the streets, and I was at a red light.
That's the worst.
And then I opened my eyes, and it was green, and I have no idea, how many cycles of the light. I could have been a few cycles. I could have been none, and then I just went.
Were you in park or did you like hold your foot on the brake?
I guess I held my foot on the brake.
After a while, I honestly have to like prop my knee in between my steering wheel just to because it's.
My legs aren't long enough to do that.
I'm your height.
Alan?
Actually, remember one time, used to look like when I was in high school, when I drove to, from my house back from school. So, I don't know how, but I don't I know, I'm just like choosing a car, and next thing I know, I'm like, oh wait, I went this one? I mean, I didn't crash or anything, I was like, oh. I unconsciously drove myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one time I was driving on Gordon Road and I don't laugh. I forgot where I was. Like for a second, I was like, where? Like oh yeah. I seriously I didn't know what road I was on.
Sure.
I blacked out.
Some days I wait, because I forget. I'll just drive and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta go to school, and then turn around and then come back here.
How many people, that happened. How many people have had some sort of experience like that? Yeah. Don't worry. Yes. You're like, oh gosh, I got to get ready, right? 7 o'clock.
Every time I wake up, I think I'm late for work. That's anxiety.
That's uncomfortable, right? Waking up from naps can be very disorienting for me, I think.
The daylight change.
Oh my god.
Sure.
It's like, it was like really 9 o'clock, it's really 7 o'clock, and it goes 8.
So it seems like we're a lot better at being unalert and unaware than we are at being alert or aware. But yeah, when you get when you're in a close call situation, a lot of times then your adrenaline starts going, right? What other situations would you be alert or awake for?
When I go to the fire hall.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. When I did the 24-hour stuff, the same thing. The phone rings and you just get up, right? What else? Patrols, sure. Did you have any issues, Sean, ever with so it's it's a non-issue, you're constantly aware. And what does it do to you to be in that constant state of attention or awareness? Well,
You're constantly stressed out.
right.
That's it.
And you burn yourself out very easily, right? And you burn yourself out not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental or emotional standpoint.
And you're drinking monsters, 5 coffees, eating energy snack bars.
Have a heart attack.
My roommate was over 23 and he had a heart attack from everything they're eating.
Everything all that stuff you're putting in, yep.
Drinking rip fuel and all that stuff.
We're going to talk a little bit about drugs and things like that in this chapter. Yep.
I know another one of the main physical awareness.
Fear, absolutely, right? And that can happen. You could be super tired and ready for bed, and you took your hot shower, and you're all good, and then you hear, I don't know, you're alone, you hear a noise in the house or something like that, and then like you are not going to sleep, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, I'll be trying to sleep, and next thing, like it'll be early in the morning before my alarm goes off. I'm trying to sleep, and I'm like semi-awake because like I can't spend my room and music annoying me while I'm trying to sleep. And, like when I try to doze back off, I hear like a loud noise, and when I look over, it's like they were messing with the blinds. It's just like it's not the standard blinds, like one of those folding blinds.
Yep.
And like they just jump right up into them for some reason, and they shake them all around. It's like.
My cats are definitely anti letting me sleep also. Yeah.
That's also if the food's empty. If the food bowl's empty, one of them will get up on my dresser and start knocking things down just to get my
I have one of those too.
Yeah, I used to have an alarm clock up there until she got up there and busted it.
Yep. My cats are awesome, but they're also the devil. Yeah. What are you gonna say, Alan?
Yeah, like one time, like I found this old typewriter. I was like, oh, cool, it's a typewriter. So I took it with me. It was like by the dump, it being thrown away. But I'm like, oh, okay, it still looks like it worked hard. Like, so I joke, like, oh, it's probably haunted. 1 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, I'm trying to sleep, I can't. And I looked up, and I'm not sure it was a car or what, but like there's this like light of like some sort of light or whatever. There was like one at first, then suddenly 2 of them just showed up. I was like, oh, what? All of a sudden, like a bunch of eyes. I didn't sleep the rest of the night.
No kidding. Sounds like you had like an alien abduction story going on there. You still have the typewriter?
Yeah.
Has it ever started like typing by itself or something?
I just keep it covered.
That's what I wouldn't still have the typewriter, I don't think. So we were talking. Sean had mentioned the Red Bulls and Monsters and energy bars and things like that. How many of you guys use stuff like that? Like, not just coffee, but these other things. Do you find that they help you?
I think if you think they help you, sure.
There's only been a couple times where I felt
Yeah, I tried because I certainly wanted to be more alert at times. But yeah, I just felt sort of racy, but not more productive.
Did you ever drink coffee and then just felt tired afterwards, not energized, just tired?
You know, I'm sure that I have. I drink coffee
At night,
at night, and I have no trouble.
going to sleep.
Yeah.
Does it ever give you a feeling of being more tired?
I don't know. I couldn't say. Did anyone ever experience that? That coffee made you more tired?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a warm cup of coffee.
I've got to drink coffee every
Well,
night.
that's just like
Next
some
thing
drugs.
it's just like, this is good.
It's like some drugs are backwards on people.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
And then you realize it's filled with coffee.
Because you were nodding out with it.
No, I never smoked coffee.
No.
I used to, and not that you guys would ever do this, and I wouldn't say that you should, but I had one class in graduate school, and it was at SPSS, it's Statistics for Sciences, and I'd get the biggest, like, triple venti Starbucks I could find. It was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would try my hardest. I really wanted to stay awake because it was a small class, and I think it's super disrespectful, to the teacher. I didn't want to be falling asleep on her, and I never made it through a whole class without nodding off, and I felt so bad. And I really did everything I could think of to not fall asleep in this woman's class. and you sit there and you're constantly like nodding off and you catch yourself, then I'd like, drop my pen.
Did she make it seem boring? Like, did she have like a sort of monotone?
No, she was super interesting. I liked her class a lot. I did well in the class. She was a really interesting woman. She had like her PSY and her JD and was young and smart. She was a lawyer and a psychologist. So I don't know, but so sometimes no matter how hard we try, I guess you can't really stay awake. And then when you really need to sleep, you can't do that either, right? And I think that is a problem. I think that you guys are at the sort of point in your lives when it's probably the worst sometimes, right? Because how many people are juggling school, jobs, work, right? You're going out with your friends. There's all these parts of college life that should be there, but it's a lot of balancing. But it's maybe prep for real life. I don't know. Okay, so we know when we're talking about this kind of consciousness that we're talking about sort of wakefulness, awareness of our environment, and things like that. So there's the idea, and this is sort of what we touched on, of minimal, moderate, and full consciousness, right? So what do you think those different terms, it's kind of like what we're just saying, when are you most aware or least aware, right? So minimal consciousness, what is that?
It's like where you're unresponsive and like your eyes are closed and you can't move, but sometimes you can still hear.
You're just unresponsive.
Unresponsive. Eyes closed. What else? What were you going to say, Sean?
Well, it said something about,
Okay, so you said, Avi, something about eyes are closed and can't see, hear, sort of unresponsive, right? So what kind of situations are we unresponsive in? A vegetative state, coma, for sure, right? What else? Less severe? Sleep, right? What else?
Last night I had the news playing and I fell asleep and I heard them say, "You want to put 911?" I don't know how. I was out and I woke right up. I don't know. I'm not weird.
Everyone like that was talking was going like over there. I was like, and that would be up to my alarm.
Yeah, but that's a really good example, right? I could see that.
That's like a terrible movie.
Yeah.
Oh my god, what is happening?
Yeah, that wouldn't be a very enjoyable part of your dream, huh? Yeah, no, not so much. All right, so that's minimal consciousness, right? You're alive, but you're unresponsive and you may not be. And they still don't know. They've looked at like brain waves and CAT scans and things like that. If people that are in a coma can hear you or not. And there's different levels of that. Sometimes people who are unresponsive but have been able to like squeeze that. Yes, yep. So there's different levels of that. Okay, and then what about moderate consciousness? Remember Freud, when we talked about the iceberg thing, we had that pre-conscious part of it, and that was right at the wave level where, we hit the iceberg. This would be moderate consciousness. So what kind of stuff could we think of there?
Like daydreaming.
Yeah, daydreaming. Good. What else?
Like you're not awake, but you're kind of still sleepy.
Yeah, yep. When you keep hitting snooze or something.
The tip of the tongue thing,
Right, and what's that, Avi?
it's where like you try to remember something, but like you don't know the name of it, so like you can fully describe it and everything. You
Yep,
just don't know
yep.
what's wrong.
Trying to reach that part of your pre-conscious memory. What else? Sleep and dreaming, right?
What about like that thing where you focus on like an object and you just completely zone out for a couple minutes?
Oh.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Who has experienced that before?
Happens to me like
Every day? Um, yeah, just zone out. You're kind of looking at something and you get stuck. I can easily do that with the TV. I could walk through a room, the TV's on, it's nothing I'm interested in, but you just sort of stop and stare. Yeah, exactly. That was
What is happening?
that was a good representation, Nico. But yeah, all right. So that's moderate consciousness. Now, so if your experience is moderate consciousness, can you be easily roused from it? Yeah, if somebody's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Let's go."
Well, my mom did that last night. I was having such a good sleep. She comes in and scares the crap out of me. And then I went to go hit her and I couldn't. Like, as I was waking up.
Yeah, but yeah, you can be easily startled out of that or pulled out of it somehow, right? And then what about full consciousness? This one should be fairly self-explanatory, right? You're up. Yep. But even when we're awake, we are, like we just talked about, a little more or less alert at times, right? Sometimes in class it could be hard to stay alert and focused. Sometimes when we're driving, you kind of drift off. So we have different levels of alertness even when we are fully conscious, right? Sometimes you're able to pay better attention than others. So one thing that we do a lot as psychologists is this stuff called like mindfulness and mindfulness training. Has anybody ever done a mindfulness exercise? What do you think it is? I mean, there's lots of different things you can do, but what do you think it is to be mindful? Yeah, know what's going on. It's sort of a heightened sense of awareness. You want to be mindful of everything in your situation, or mindful of someone else. Yep.
Being mindful of like different actions.
Different what?
Of, like different actions, not like actions, not just yourself, but everything around you.
Sure. Yep. It's like sort of, I don't know, you see on TV, sometimes they illustrate it with like everything slows down and you become like increasingly aware of things around you. That can be like mindfulness, right?
Are your senses heightened naturally?
Yeah, yep. And they are. And what neurotransmitters might help with that? Norepinephrine. Yep, dopamine, noradrenaline, norepinephrine. Yep, all those things could sort of work, right, to heighten our senses. So that would be released, showing that our brains would know something's going on or would trigger something.
Yeah, like a fear, or let's say a person.
Yep, absolutely.
Threat, just raise everybody aware.
Yep, yeah, like your hair stands up on the back of your neck, that sort of thing. That's sort of like mindfulness. Okay, so that's a heightened level of consciousness, sort of. Okay, so we know that we need to pay attention to things to do what? Focus. What was that? Survive. What do we talk about in memory? What's the best way, the first thing we need to do to guarantee that information is going to stick with us? Before that? You need to pay attention, right? You need to actually pay attention to what's going on in order to be able to remember it. So that's the first step. And we talked about things like selective versus divided attention, right? Okay. And what was selective attention? Sure. And then divided attention? Multitasking, like studying while you're watching TV, things like that. Okay, so we know that which kind of attention is going to be more effective or efficient when we're working on memory and consciousness. Selective attention, right? where we're choosing to pay attention to something. So in this conscious state, we have to choose and then be able to focus on whatever it is that we want to focus on. Whether it's our own existence or somebody else's, being aware of somebody else's movement or thinking about a threat, right? Things like that we have to do. All right. So, as a conscious thought, what do we need to do? We're going to pay selective attention. So let's put ourselves in a situation. A lot of us in here, we like to watch like the cop shows, right? And Law and Order and Criminal Minds and stuff like that. So a lot of times in those situations, we see the characters having to do what? Yeah, put yourselves in the unsub or the suspect situation, right? Try to experience what they are experiencing and get into their conscious experience. What else do they have to do? What do they do when they're going to a crime scene or something? Reenact it, okay. And that kind of goes along with putting yourself in their position and what they might have done. What else do they have to do? Take pictures. Learn about the person.
Try to figure out their next move or where they're going.
Yep, and using all those tools, the pictures, the profiling, the next move thing, how do they do that? You go to a crime scene, there's a lot of information there, right? So, okay, right, they pick out one thing at a time, like see that clock there, or this, tiny piece of glass here, this could mean what? So in order to be able to do that, they're using what our text would call dichotic listening. What does it mean to be dichotic? Two, right? So dichotic listening is when you can sort of pay attention to two things out of like your two different ears. And this is a skill that you have to sort of develop. How do you think you would develop that? A lot of practice, right? And then what would we do with the material that we get in? Sorry? Yep. And then say they're both important. You decide that these are two important things that you're hearing. A lot of times, when would you do this? Do you ever watch TV and then also half listen to somebody else in the house having like a conversation on the phone or something like that, right? That's dichotic listening. You can listen to two different things at the same time. So if we take this back to our sort of crime scene situation, they can be listening to maybe the other team members they're with talk, while at the same time, listening to a specific detail or picking up a specific part of some other conversation. So if they're both important, they're both relevant, they're going to go where? Into your memory, right? And then you can use that later. So another example of this sort of specific listening that they give is called the cocktail party effect. How many of you guys have ever gone to what you would consider a cocktail party? Yeah, it's not like so common really, but being at a party, say, and you're talking with friends here, but then you hear your name, your ears sort of pick up your name from somewhere else in the room. Have you guys ever experienced something like that before? And then what do you do when you hear your name? What? Yeah, or like, wait, what are they saying about me? Yeah. What are you guys talking about? Yeah. So that's another way that we can sort of divide our conscious experience in two things. Okay. So we're going to keep going with consciousness. So read through the notes a bit, and I guess that's it. Okay, so I will see you Friday, and read up ahead a little bit. We'll try to get through some of this more. yeah, our environment. And how do we get in? We've been talking the last few classes about our senses, right? And before that, we talked about memory and sensory memory. So we are getting these things into our conscious experience through the environment, through things coming through our senses, going into our sensory memory. And then where do they need to be for us to be aware of them? What are they going to go to? Short-term memory, right? Our conscious memory. When things are there, what do we decide to do or not do with them? Right, we're going to filter through them because we can't take it all in all at once. It's too much. So we're going to filter it through. So our conscious experience is our sort of current awareness of our environment or surroundings. Right? We're not really conscious of the past unless you start thinking about the past, then it's in your conscious awareness. So, in order to be conscious, there are two sort of things that we can be, according to our textbook. We can have wakefulness. What does that sound like? Yeah. Wakefulness is being awake, right? You can be awake, you can be asleep. What neurotransmitters have we talked about that are related to wakefulness? What's that? Which one we talked about a lot? Serotonin. Yep. So serotonin helps us with being asleep and being awake. That's wakefulness, right? The other kind of consciousness we're going to have is awareness, right? So you can be awake but totally sort of zoned out, spaced out, unaware of your environment. So awareness is our awareness of things around us in our environment, the situation, the factors that are going on. So we can have variations in both of these things. You can be awake but sleepy. You can be aware but sleepy. You can be super awake but not aware of what's going on around you. How do you guys, how does everyone feel right now? Do you feel awake? What degree of wakefulness do you think? Does anybody feel super awake right now? Yeah, it's common when you're on this end of the lecture to not feel all that awake. I wish it weren't so, but it's true. I'm pretty awake because I sort of have to be. I'm talking actively, right? If I were to say to somebody needs to stand up front here and give a presentation on the parts of the brain, would you wake up? Yeah. Does the thought of that even wake you up? A little bit? Like, what could feel awake if I said I was going to do that?
Like, I don't know, it will stress us out.
It would stress you out? And how would you feel that? Physically, mentally? Both? What physical signs might you have from stress and awakeness? Heart racing? Shaky? Yeah. What's that? Yeah, yep. It's not a comfortable experience to have that thrown on you, nor would I do it. Probably. Were you say something? Yeah. Yeah, you start overthinking things, right? How can you run out the door right now? Making a plan for escape. All right. So, obviously, depending on what's going on in your current environment, can cause these different variations. So, we've got different stages of consciousness that we can go through. It would be minimal, moderate, or full. So minimal consciousness is what? I mean, what does it sound like?
It's like you're hardly thinking.
Like the bare minute. You're barely awake or barely aware. In what kinds of situations would you not be aware of things?
Tired.
Yeah. What do we do when we're tired? Besides fall asleep. You zone out, right? Have you ever been, I don't know, like I could sit in my car if I'm tired, totally space out, and then like, you know, somebody comes up and knocks on your window and you just about jump through the roof because you weren't really paying attention to like the world around you, right? So that can cause like a startle effect, certainly being less aware. When else could we be less aware or minimally conscious? Okay. Now, in that instance, I would call that maybe more divided attention or divided awareness. You are unaware of what's going on around you, but it's less due, it sounds like, to alertness and more due to the fact that you're texting, that you've split your attention, right? And that's a thing, especially in moderate and full consciousness. That becomes a big issue, that split attention, because you can't be fully conscious of both or three things at the same time, right? What about people that are like in a coma? They're alive, right? Are they responsive? What's that? Yeah, they could be unconscious. They could be mildly responsive in some states, show brain activity or something like that, but not be able to physically show it, right? What else? When would we be unresponsive? You guys are kind of unresponsive right now. I feel like you're just at the minimum there. Okay. When are times that you find that you are less awake and aware? Who's like a morning person? Is anybody a morning person? Couple, me. Okay. Then who's a night person? Okay, so you guys feel more awake or alert at night, right? When during the day do you find yourself to be more awake or alert? Or what set of circumstances? After lunch you're awake? After lunch is when I want to just take a nap. Who feels more awake after lunch? Sailor? Who feels less? Okay, and other people just, no difference, right? I guess it depends on what you eat. Yeah.
After school, probably like breakfast.
Yeah?
After school, because I noticed that in the morning time, usually on the bus, everybody's quiet. And when, like in the afternoon, it's time for everybody to go home. Everybody's like, getting.
Sure. I think in your guys' situation, being college students, a lot of you, it seems like, work and go to school and probably still hopefully find time to go out with your friends and, have a good time. You guys are probably on the least sleep until you have children that y'all have. You guys are up late studying, or you out late and then you're up early studying, or however it works. So you guys are good examples of when you can be sort of awake or alert. When are you least alert? When can you just not stay awake? In the morning? Like when you get out of bed, or? Okay, all right, so a hard time getting up out of bed. Well, that's true, especially if you're night people, right? What do you do if you need to wake yourself up? Shower? Hot shower? Cold shower? Any kind of shower? If I take a hot shower at night, I will go to sleep. But in the morning, I guess a regular shower will do it. Walk around the house, like do jumping jacks or exercise, right? Get your heart racing a little bit, does something. What else? Cold water on your face. Yep. What do you do if you're driving and you find yourself sort of nodding out? Pull over. That's the safe. Yep. Put your music up. Put the windows down. Right. call and talk to somebody, hopefully hands-free. Hopefully don't text and drive while you're tired. What about when you need to do the opposite? When you need to bring yourself back down and sleep? What can you do? All right. Benadryl also works for me. Dramamine. Watch a movie? What if it's a good movie? Yeah. If it's a good movie, it'll keep me up.
That's like
Yeah.
I listen to music.
Listen to music, like not like punk rock at that time of day, right? You can't sleep listening to music, but you can sleep watching a movie.
as long as it's not like really fast music.
Something soothing. What's it? Jack Johnson. Okay. What else? What else helps us be awake or alert or not? Do you guys drink those like energy drinks and stuff? Anybody? You do think they work? Who thinks they work? We had sort of a debate about this in the last class. Oh,
I drive like 3 or 4 hours, 2 o'clock in the morning, and that drink with this can't go.
kept you up. Are you a coffee drinker? Okay, so you have a little lower tolerance probably to some of that stuff, right? Maybe that's how it works or doesn't work on people. What else have you guys found about that? We had a bit of an interesting conversation about whether or not they work.
I don't know if they work, but they're unsafe for me. 'Cause,
Unsafe for you?
Yeah, I have heart palpitations if
Sure. Massive amounts of vitamin B in there, and that does cause palpitations. But what?
Like a Red Bull or anything like that, I can like
Feel it.
feel my heart.
Sure.
It makes me like paranoid and have anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my god.
So thinking about that, did anybody else have that kind of experience? You too? But it works. Yeah.
I don't think soda keeps me out there or coffee.
I agree with you on both of those things. But I think that, like with other things we've talked about, if you build up tolerances to them, right? I drink a lot of coffee, and I have been for a long time. For 20 years, I've been drinking a lot of coffee. So I certainly think that I would have a tolerance to it.
I'm on to that. The more you have coffee, she acts so much different.
Yeah, me too. And I get awful headaches from withdrawal.
Yeah.
If you're a caffeine user and you don't have some, you can get pretty bad withdrawal symptoms. I mean, caffeine is a stimulant, right? It's a drug, which makes me think that and the energy drinks. So what about people that do illegal drugs to be awake or alert or not so? How do you think that plays into your conscious experience?
Take Adderall a lot. Stay awake from these cycles.
So that's a stimulant, right? So Adderall is something that's often prescribed for ADD, ADHD, and it's a stimulant. Do you guys know what part of the brain it works on? All right, so the reason that this is just a quick aside, but a lot of people are prescribed Adderall or Ritalin, any of those, Vyvanse, yep. New Vigil. That's one for keeping awake. So the theory is, why would you give a stimulant to an overstimulated person, right? Somebody with ADD who can't focus. Anybody know why? Okay, so the theory is that when you have ADD, your frontal lobe, as it is developing as your children, right? And we talked about brain development, has not fully developed yet. And your frontal lobe does what? Personality, focus, attention, right? So if your frontal lobe isn't fully developed, you may have trouble focusing or paying attention or being organized. The idea is that some of these stimulants will stimulate your frontal lobe to stimulate you to be able to pay attention and be organized. So if you have ADD because of those symptoms and you take a stimulant, what should happen? if you can now be calm and focused, right, and pay attention, it should help these symptoms, right? So what if you take it, but you don't have an underactive frontal lobe? It's just a stimulant then, right? Just like meth or cocaine or anything else, it just stimulates you. So that's the sort of the difference, and that's why they prescribe it. What are some drugs people take to be less conscious or aware? Benadryl, which is totally legal. Marijuana, which is totally not yet in this state, and I shouldn't say totally, is not in North Carolina. Yeah, and recreational somewhere else interesting that now I can't remember. West, yeah. Yeah, so a couple states have it for medical reasons, and some have medical and recreational. Titania, you said alcohol, certainly, right? Does anybody at the point yet where they get home from a tough day and have to have a glass of wine to relax? That's like something you do in your 30s, probably. Yeah, okay. Nice cold beer. Thanks. I don't need to have a glass of wine. I enjoy it. Does anybody drink, this is totally random, but does anyone drink like casually? Or do you guys just drink when you like go out? Like, does anyone like have a glass of wine or a beer with dinner?
When I get home from work, if I'm working really hard, I just open a beer.
Yep, okay. Who drinks just when they go out? Like just if they're partying? And who, some people do, yeah. Who hates drinking? Do you hate, the people that hate it, do you hate it because of a bad experience or just the general idea of it or something? The idea, family histories. Yeah.
It stays.
What's that?
It stays. So that plays a really big factor for me.
It stinks?
Yeah, like just like the smell of it, it just kind of stinks.
Of any alcohol at all?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I guess that's a good thing for my family because I have a long line of alcoholics in my family.
Yep. And we know, and we'll talk about more, that it is, there's a strong genetic link, as you guys already know, certainly. What other drugs do people take? I mean, not you specifically, but how else do we get less aware? Narcotics, right? Pain medication, heroin, opium. I don't know if opium is very common anymore. What?
Seems like it is here in Wilmington.
Is it? Is Wilmington very drug centered?
They have a heroin epidemic.
Yes, I've heard about that, and then pain medications and stuff like that. Okay. That's always interesting to me because I've had patients that have always wanted to, like, they'll self-medicate, like people that are feeling anxious or depressed or, hear voices and they want the voices to stop because they're very negative. Will do what we would call self-medicate, which would be to drink or take any kind of drug they could get their hands on to make those bad feelings go away. And that's one sort of thing. But then you also have people who have severe pain due to a disease or an accident or an injury, right? And get physically addicted to painkillers without having like that psychological dependence on them, but their body literally is in a lot of pain and they have to use more and more. So people get addicted that way too. Have you guys heard of the idea of like an addictive personality? What do you think about that? Do you think it's a real thing? Okay, and what do you see are the symptoms or first one thing, then another? And what might those things be? Right, it could certainly start with anything, right? Some people get addicted to food. Does anybody ever seen that? Like you feel bad and you eat food, do some emotional eating? People do that. Anybody here? Okay, that's like kind of a thing, right? Cigarettes, that's a thing. What else? What? Okay, can you think of any? I agree. Just anybody know anybody who's like sort of a neat freak, or like vacuums constantly or cleans constantly?
Sometimes I wake up at like 3 in the morning and start vacuuming.
Yeah, because that now you're right. You're disrupting your sleep, and it becomes a thing. Now, do you have other things?
I make my bed before I get in it.
Do you have things outside of cleanliness? You know, do you like search for other maybe addictions or areas of control, or is that your thing?
That's like my thing.
Okay, so that's like definitely a control thing, but sounds like not an addictive, which is good, right? Because you don't want to have that.
Yeah.
What else? What else do people do?
I go shopping when I'm depressed.
Okay, who does that? Yeah. And what does it do? Makes you feel better. And then what? Worse. All right. Now, do you do things besides that, or is that your thing? That's your thing.
Color my hair.
Okay. Right? Do some sort of change or something. Does anybody feel like they have an addictive personality? Like they're moving from one thing to another?
I feel like that kind of classifies having an ego. Like, I'm a different person.
Like,
Like somebody saying that they have an addictive personality, would that be kind of having ego?
it would be kind of
The idea of an ego, but not the
not the Freudian ego, but the
like kind of ego.
yeah. Well, because what are they saying really when they're sharing that information?
They're saying that they're like that they are a addictive person that you're
Okay, and what else? What else are you learning about this person? Because this is an interesting point. What do they like? They think highly of themselves. Maybe they like attention. Maybe sometimes people tell you about their problems or addictions. Why? Yeah, to get some empathy, to get some attention, right? Absolutely. And attention could be what? A cry for help. It could also be an addiction, right? You need to do so. Some of these people, who are these people in your life? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a friend, well, not really my friend, she's my best friend.
That's usually how these start. Yeah.
She's like, she always posts on Snapchat like videos of her drinking and like shotgunning beers. She'll like do videos of her like, you know, doing drugs or whatever, and then like it just got worse and worse and worse. Like as like the year went through.
Sure.
Then she got caught. Like she was posting stuff online.
Right. So this is somebody who is addicted to things and addicted to attention, right? Really wanting to. And social media gives quite an outlet for that, right? You guys, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to ask for attention. I mean, what are we really doing when we post a picture?
Wanting people to like it.
Yeah, right? We're asking for attention. It could be in a totally innocent way, right? You want to see, you know, pictures of your puppies so your sister can see it.
Can you be addicted to someone?
That's an interesting question. How would you define that? So she asked, can you be addicted to someone?
Like crushes. I mean, I've known people who, if they like somebody, they literally know their daily schedule, what they get for Christmas and their birthday.
Is that being addicted to someone or like stalking them though? How would we define addiction?
Maybe obsessive.
Obsessive, certainly, right?
Whenever somebody's without that person, they feel like they hurt with them somehow.
Could we define it chemically?
Depends on like what's like alcoholism, like if that's like being chemically addicted, like
If we could have like a sort of a constant brain scan going and see what areas lit up or didn't, when they were told to think of someone or saw someone, things like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Who thinks you can be addicted to a person? Who thinks definitely not? Okay. I'm wondering how much that changes amongst different age groups too. Maybe as you are younger or older, your feelings could change or mellow or increase. I don't know.
More like obsessive though than it would be an addiction.
Yep. All right. Tying that back to the idea of consciousness, if you are addicted, well, it's all, this is all related, right? If we are addicted to someone or very interested in something going on, do you think we are minimal, moderate, or full conscious? Full, right? If you know somebody's schedule and you're thinking about them like all the time.
No, but it changes. Like, if they end up being like a girlfriend or something, then she finds somebody else and does the same thing.
Yeah. So that would be, chain, like switching addictions, right? Like, okay, I'm going to quit smoking, but now I'm going to start drinking. Something like that, right? Okay. I was trying to think of what I did. I quit smoking a long time ago, and I started running. And then I got a little bit too into the running. I think I briefly started drinking more. And then probably switched that out for like a cleaner diet, But I don't think I have an addictive personality. I think you just focus on different areas at your life at different times in your life, right? Could anyone think of different times in their life they've been focused on different things? Yeah, like a hobby. Used to be into drawing, and are you just a little less into drawing now? You don't do it at all, right? I certainly have a closet full of like different interests and projects and things that I've been into over the years that I'm currently not into, and sometimes it comes back and sometimes it doesn't. But I wouldn't call that an addictive personality. I guess some people might, but that's sort of the idea when we think about consciousness of doing like moderate consciousness, because you're sort of splitting your attention between different things, different hobbies. So in life, in your regular day-to-day life for you guys, what sort of things does your attention get split into? What do you have to pay attention to or not? What's that? School, certainly. What else? Friends, family. And those are like your major categories. And then you've got, like, when you drive to school, what do you have to pay attention to? However you want to find the road, but yes. Yep. What else? Work, right? What's going on at work? What else do? You probably eat food at some point during the day, right? Hopefully hang out with your friends at some point. So all this stuff gets split up a little bit. And what happens when we split our attention? Some things can get missed, right? So some areas where you feel like you should pay more attention. Does anybody, this is for me, feel like they should like contact elderly relatives more than they do? That's like a constant for me, right? Or see your family more, something like that. So things start getting split, things start getting missed. Maybe you forget a homework assignment, or you're trying to eat healthy but you run out of time and you end up with fast food, right? So things happen that sort of split our attention. Now there's a couple ways that we talked about ways in memory that we can sort of improve things, right? But there's ideas and forms of attention that we can too. So there's something called in our conscious experience the idea of dichotic listening. And this is in the notes. What do you think when you think dichotic? What's that mean?
Listening to
Two, right? So we have 2 ears. You can pay enough attention and be conscious and listen to 2 different things out of your ears. How do you see that happening?
you can have like one earbud in and
Sure, okay, or a conversation or something. She said 1 earbud in listening to music, 1 ear listening to TV show, a conversation, things like that. I'm sure you've been in a situation where you were sort of focused in on one conversation with a person, but then sort of half listening to the room as well. What else? When would you be in a situation like that? I mean, you could be in a situation like that right now in class, right? People talk, whisper, whatever. So you could be, half listening to me and half listening to them. And I think I just sort of said it there. The problem with dichotic listening is that you're half listening, right? So if you're splitting your attention like that, you're going to miss stuff. You're not getting as much in. If the idea behind listening is that you're wanting to learn information, either about the conversation what the person's telling you or about the class, if it's split, it's not going to be as successfully encoded into your long-term memory, right? Another kind of sort of multi-listening is what they call the cocktail party effect. What happens if you're at a party or wherever and you're talking with someone, say, talking with a group of friends, and then you hear somebody say your name? Look around, start paying attention, like either turn to answer them or find them, or turn to wonder what they're saying about you, right? So that's what they call that cocktail party. You are just listening, you're focused, you're conscious of just your conversation, but then your mind, your psyche is able to pick it up when somebody says your name. So it's not really split attention until that actually happens. All right, so those are different kinds of split attention. And we know some of that from memory and learning, and so obviously that's going to be similar when we're talking about our conscious experience. Now, we talked about needing to pay attention when it's time to want information to be encoded or get into your memory. So we would need to have sustained attention, sustained awareness of a particular person, conversation, object, whatever it is that you're trying to learn about, right? You have to do what? Try to zone everything else out, focus, right? Focus in on that one object. How long do you think you can do that for? How long could you, stare at a statue or a painting or a list of words to memorize and keep attention? 30 seconds. Who thinks they could do longer than 30 seconds? With some practice, depending on the target, probably. All right. So the psychological world thinks that you can, using a particular kind of test, the continuous performance test, you can continually hold focus for around 15 minutes. Most people cannot go longer than that. And that their accuracy on this test, on this exam, declines a bunch after 5 or 7 minutes. So what they have to do is they're showed a progression of rapidly flashing letters, and they have to keep looking for the same letter amongst it. So, you're going to flash the whole alphabet in front of you in no particular order, and you have to keep finding the R, and like hit the thing when you see the R, the R, the R, the R. So how long do you think you could do that for, thinking about that as the measure? Do you think you could do up to 15 minutes? Be accurate up to 6 or 7? Yes. Who thinks yes? Who thinks yes if you were super awake, alert, and caffeinated, and your brain were like, cool. Yeah, right? But if it was like when you get out of bed and you haven't had to think so far that day, maybe not. Who takes, when you get out of bed in the morning, does anybody have to think immediately? Yeah?
Depends on what it's about.
I don't even know if I'm grab my eggs
Mm-hmm.
I'm just quiet.
That's me. I sort of have a no questions policy, too early or too late. Or if I'm doing too many things. It's tough to sort of multitask, right? And so first things first would be sustained attention. That might be like getting to the coffee pot. Maybe after that you can look into multitasking or divided attention. All right. That's where we're going to end off today. We'll talk a little bit about multitasking. Keep looking through the notes on consciousness, please.